I've sat and thought and sat, made slave to notions, for naught begat. The pointless trek through mud and clay, made dust of years, recalled today. I fed the beast inside my head. I listened close to what it said, that mine own life was cast aside to dote upon its beastly chide. I can't return, I can't go back. The time I wasted fades black. It's done and over. I've shed my tears. I've slept my nights with heavy fears. Reticence has borne no peace. The only help is in release. The time lost is time not returned, but heed the lesson that can be learned. Once crushed between my mental gears, crumbling behind my soft veneer, advice I now give as volunteer. Don't let your mind steal your years.
Welcome to the Red Room, where we consider more and sometimes rant. For anyone who's ever struggled with it, you already know what I'm about to get into. Anxiety is a horrible mental prison that can easily become debilitating. For my entire adolescent life and into the first years of adulthood, I suffered terribly. Trying to hide panic attacks in public and around loved ones became routine, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I couldn't get enough air. There are some days where I still do. Simple, everyday interactions with strangers made my body tremble and my heart pound. I felt stupid, incapable, which only reinforced my anxieties, which only continued the cycle. It was a miserable, terrifying existence. The thing about anxiety is it's not rational, not in the least. There's no truth in it, but it's still very, very convincing. These things don't just come about. Sure, certain people may be predisposed to developing it, but it's usually a learned response. Maybe a bad experience brought it out. Maybe the fear of a bad experience is the culprit. Either way, it can lock you inside your own head and can bar you from living life or even wanting to live life. And there's a quote from my poem that I still revisit when I need a reminder. Don't let your mind steal your years. Now, the mind can be a really nice place or it can make your life a living hell. It absolutely depends on the habits formed, consciously or otherwise, throughout the day. And I've had to learn that the hard way. The biggest thing about the mind is it's yours. Well, duh, you say. Of course it's mine. But some people view it differently. It's instead believed that one is the mind rather than the mind being something one possesses. It's hard to step outside of yourself. After all, the mind is something you're born with, something you quite literally can't live without, but it's also something you create. It can be easy to let the mind run with the mental habits formed over the years, and thus breaking said habits can be a years-long trial. The mind, in a way, can grow its own sentience, running with the programs installed earlier in life. And that's where we got to get to work. For years, I fed my mind the things that would only drag me deeper under. Negative self-talk, the belief that I couldn't talk about my problems, and unhealthy media created a breeding ground for anxious thoughts all the time. But, as I was taught and learned, your subconscious is always watching. It's always listening. And it doesn't know the difference between what is and isn't good to take in. It's up to us to feed it the right things. Like a little child, it's a sponge and will take and internalize everything. It's ours to care for, to nurture, to cleanse and purge accordingly. The beautiful thing is, there's always an opportunity to take things in a different direction, in a better place. The first step is always the most difficult, especially when the misery becomes something one is accustomed to. Another option seems nearly impossible, and that's what keeps so many people trapped in an endless loop. Anything can become habit, and with all habits, there is an ironic sense of almost comfort. Even if they hate the habit, it can be one constant in a person's life, lending to that ill-gotten complacency. For a long time, I identified myself with my anxiety. I thought it was who I was and who I would always be. So of course things didn't really change until I chose to adopt a different mindset. All throughout high school, I thought it was something I had to live with, and so I did, miserably. I pretended it wasn't there around other people because I was ultimately ashamed of it, embarrassed of it. I thought I was the only one in the world dealing with it. At least that's how it felt. I knew it wasn't something many of my peers went through, or so I thought. People don't talk about many of the things they go through, either because they don't know how to or they don't want to burden others. Like most people, I probably could have benefited from a bit of therapy, but them bills, screw that. More than that, I decided I wanted to take the power into my own hands. I was tired of being the person I was. Like I said in my last video, change can be a form of love. Stagnation is one of the most painful and frustrating feelings a person can endure. Naturally, we all crave to grow, and to be better than we were. And to break the mental prison preventing that growth is possibly one of the most loving things you can do for yourself. And so I did it, and I continue to do it. I'm not going to say I'm 100% anxiety free. I still have my moments from time to time. New things can be scary. Sometimes I regress and become my own worst enemy. But I'm now a person who won't allow it to consume me, for me to stay in that state. I fight back and I challenge it, because I now know I'm deserving of better. I deserve to live, and my mind is not going to steal any more of my years. As I write this part of the script for the video, I'm enjoying some me time at my local Starbucks, something I would never have allowed myself to do just a few short years ago. The old me would have been hyper aware of every pair of eyes that landed on me, afraid to place my order, and afraid that every little thing I did appeared graceless and incompetent to everyone else. The old me would have withered and wallowed, placing everyone she saw on a pedestal high above herself, because everyone else had it together, and because she didn't, everyone else was laughing. But that was because my mind had me. I didn't have it. Back to my earlier point, my mind is now mine, and even in those moments where I falter and stumble and slip, where old programs rear their heads once again, I'm all too hip to the game now, and I can take back my power within a few moments. Getting to this point can be a years-long process because it takes years to construct an anxious mindset. Because of this, patience is key. Patience with yourself, patience with the process, and patience on those difficult days will get you through to the other side. It is not fun. But what painful thing is? To anyone struggling with anxiety, you owe it to yourself to break free. Even if it's just one step at a time, even if it's just one tiny little baby step, each one matters. Exposure therapy is real and very effective. I used to be so terrified of speaking on the phone with strangers, I would literally write out the things I would say just to get through the conversation. Whatever helps you get through it, do it. Do it until it doesn't feel foreign and scary. Do it even after that, because at the end of the day, what your anxious mind believes is not real. The things that seem impossible are very possible. When you plant your feet and embrace the fear, you realize it's not nearly as scary as it all seems in your head, and people aren't thinking about you nearly as much as you believe. So stumble, make mistakes, but do your best not to get lost in them. 20, 30, 40 years from now, will the things that worry you now matter? Will they hold the same weight? Would you want them to? These are the questions I ask myself whenever I start spiraling and overthinking the choices I made or didn't make. Life is full of choices, but if I'm too afraid to make them, am I even living? Damn the fear. That's not a life worth living. It takes all the energy I'm giving. The first few years of my adulthood were sacrificed thanks to anxiety. I was afraid and felt I wasn't worthy of connection. My mind was full of junk ideas and a junk sense of self, so I'm correcting it by acknowledging my strength rather than my flaws today. Rewiring the mind is essential, and just like with anything, consistency is key to seeing results. I started looking at the things I was doing, thinking, and saying in everyday life that may not be contributing to my fight against anxiety. I used to have horrible, vivid nightmares, like some real sick stuff. So what did I do? I nixed the horror movies, resisted intrusive thoughts, and I instead watched mindfulness videos. I meditated. I forced myself to sit in quiet with my thoughts, if only for a few moments. And of course, again, that takes practice. At the time, it felt like I made no progress at all, but with the blessing of retrospect, I can see how my change in habits paid off. If I feel a panic attack coming on now, I tether myself to the moment. Trying to run away from the moment only exacerbates it and prolongs it. I think about the things going right, like the people in my life, like a funny moment, or a thing to be grateful for. And as it always does, it passes. It can't stay in those moments. It's petrifying when you feel like the air coming to you isn't enough, and your heart is pounding so hard it wrecks your whole body. But the knowledge that always gets me through is that it will pass. It's scary right now. Probably really, really scary. And it's okay to admit that. but it will pass. Fearing the fear becomes less and less habitual, and loving the moment becomes more natural. After all, we come into this world already knowing how to do that. Innocent children don't fear the future or dwell on the past, and maybe that's why the days seemed longer when we were children. We were truly embracing and living in every moment. Life really seems to fly by now, and with all the distractions and stresses we have, it's no wonder. I'm refusing to let my inner child wither and die. She knows the secret to life that I forgot. But I'm slowly remembering. It's okay to be here, now. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever doesn't, doesn't. And the past does love attention. The future loves to be pondered. It's hard to look in either direction and not feel like you're being pulled, especially with society's tendency to yearn for a simpler past or escape to a brighter future. In the beginning, it can be hard to be content with the now, but the now is really all we've got. The now shows where we came from, and the now allows us to work toward where we want to be. Anything else is intangible. I am more than the fear I've lived with. You are too. This life was meant to be lived, and I'm at a place now where I'm ready to live it. I'm willing to learn what I'm capable of, and I know that my goals are attainable. It's important for people as a whole to know that. We're hammered in the head with this concept of a timeline, and I know for me that was one of the main contributors to my anxiety. But life doesn't always follow through like the movies do, and that's totally fine. We all have our own trials, tribulations, and lessons to learn. And at 25, I'm so happy that I'm learning these lessons now. Circumstances has forced me to confront what otherwise would have been issues I'd have brought into life later on. And now I've found my voice. It's only getting stronger. I'm getting stronger. And for anyone else who needs to hear it, you can too. Thanks for listening. If you like this video, consider giving it a like, subscribing, leaving a comment, or all of the above. See you in the next one.